delighted to be a part of your program. Incidentally, I think there was a time when this ecosystem was still taking roots, when we had to worry about what next. I think now we have reached a situation of how to catch up with the speed with which the entire story is unfurling. Today, you catch them young. I had the distinct pleasure and an opportunity to interact with some children who are, in many cases, school-going kids, mostly girls, if I remember correctly, who have come up with some brilliant ideas. And I think the understanding amongst our young boys and girls that we don't want to be just a job seeker, we want to actually become a job creator. And we want to contribute to a better world, a better future for the entire humanity, is now seeping into our children. Gone are the days when you and I, as parents, could force our children to join an engineering college and become an idiot like we saw in the Three Idiots. These days, kids have a mind of their own. Some of them have really different paths that they choose and excel in. So I personally believe that the entire thinking in the country is gradually moving towards exploring the new world, exploring new ideas, tinkering with new ways of doing the same thing better. So take the example of the Atal Tinkering Labs. At a very young age, they started imbibing the spirit of inquiry amongst our young boys and girls. So to my mind, the whole ecosystem now is going to take growth by leaps and bounds. We'll have newer and newer ideas. You'll soon have ideas choosing what fund to take. We have it already in some cases where they are shopping, which is the fund they want to associate with their ideas. And I'm quite sure we'll see more and more of that. I do hope we don't rest on our laurels of 90 plus unicorns or 10 unicorns in calendar 22 already. We don't get the satisfaction of being the third largest startup ecosystem, but encourage more and more youngsters, more and more people with new ideas to explore the unknown. And I'm very confident that this is the way to go. The next 25 years of our Amrit Kal will be full of new ideas, new innovation, research, and understanding of how we can do things better. Huge amount of fintech, edtech, health tech. A lot of new things are going to prevail and change the way we live. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and great that on a day where you're helping pull out the last remaining Indian students in Ukraine, you found time to still catch up with us. Thank you. And fully agree with you that I think we should not be resting a lot on our laurels, and really the next 25 years of Amrit Kal should be the next sort of wave. As you correctly said, I think entrepreneurism and innovation, the desire is deep-rooted now in India's young people. It's clearly become an aspiration. I guess we now need the right sort of support from all stakeholders, including the government, to really truly support this innovation and risk-taking, because some of the elements you mentioned, like, for instance, you take an area like space tech, it's a new level of risk that entrepreneurs and investors need to take, and we really look forward to the right sort of framework that the government can provide, and given the past track record, I'm sure that will be coming as well. The other question, Minister, was on this National Startup Advisory Council that you have constituted and you chair, and I think it's completed a little over a year. You have You have been closely interacting with entrepreneurs and investors over the year as you've been chairing these meetings. Are there any sort of key sort of learnings you have from these discussions in terms of what can again help sort of unlock the next wave of opportunities? And for us as investors, I mean, how do we really encourage these risk-taking entrepreneurs in the best possible way? Obviously, on a sustainable way, as in finally we need to make good risk-adjusted returns for our own investors to keep coming back and grow the pile of capital that is available for such innovation in India.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. I think what's important and what I see as some of the most important outcomes of the Startup Advisory Council have been the fact that we all recognize that there's a large pool of talent in the interiors of India in areas which are hitherto not exposed to the new ways in which financing is available or in which new ideas can be encouraged. And if all of us, particularly those from the cities, metropolitan cities, or from the India's Silicon Valley in Bengaluru, or Gurugram, Noida, Delhi region, Pune, Mumbai region, if all of us were to be willing to sacrifice a little bit of time and effort, if venture capital funds would take a little more effort to reach out to tier 3, tier 4 towns and cities, I think there's a lot of opportunity awaiting us across India. I have seen that some of the children from these smaller places, with their very, let's say, elementary thinking, also come up with brilliant ideas. And I wish all of us would dedicate some amount of time or effort to help spread the possibilities that the new ecosystem holds. We could be mentors. We could actually handhold some of these young boys and girls. We could provide this initial seed funding, which in these small places is also very small. And my own sense is domestic capital will have to increasingly play an important role to make this happen. And I know that some of you all are doing wonderful work in this direction, but more and more I interact with our young startups. I get the sense that that's where, if we all were to focus, we could actually see some transformational journeys coming out of India. I mean, for that matter, even amongst our current unicorns, there are some companies which are promoted by entrepreneurs who come from very remote areas of Odisha or the interior parts of the country. I mean, in a way, if you go to see, there are some entrepreneurs in business or manufacturing who may not fall in the same category of the startups as we understand them today, with a lot of technology-based ideas. But a lot of our entrepreneurs in India, the big business houses also, have their roots in very rural areas, small towns, small businesses, starting off as a small scale unit or a tiny unit. But with their grit and determination, they've made it really big on the international scene. Similarly, on the startup ecosystem also, I personally believe there's huge untapped potential, which we should all put in our best effort to reach out to. Thank you.
Wonderful. You, I think, hit the nail on the head, Honorable Minister, when you said that domestic capital has a very important role to play, particularly as you spawn out beyond the metropolises and tier 1 cities and for the next wave of innovation. And it also provides sort of sticky capital to add on to the sometimes volatile international flows that can be there. And that is clearly an identified area which will really help this ecosystem become more stable, more robust, and grow in size. Any thoughts from you on how that obviously it is a gradual process of and some of that has already, from a regulatory perspective, has already been underway. Whereas in practice, I guess the amounts will increase over a period of time. But any perspectives from you, Honorable Minister, on how we can help channelize that domestic capital into innovation, into startups, into venture a little faster over the years to come?
I think one important element in this will be the outreach program. We'll have to probably engage with the incubators that are being set up all across the country. If I remember correctly, we've recently come up with a scheme to support the incubators which are set up in different parts of the country with some initial pool of capital. I think if the domestic venture capital industry could literally adopt, or at least some of you could adopt some of these incubators and reach out and give confidence to our new startups in remoter areas of India, that can make a lot of difference. Many of them they're not aware of what are the aware of the fact that government or the private sector is willing to give them a chance, willing to put money on the table to encourage and support them, willing to handhold them, willing to uh, help fine tune their initial ideas with support of technology, a better understanding of how the system works. For example, an entrepreneur may have a very good idea, but he may not really be able to understand how to convert that idea using technology, the newer ways of working like blockchain or big data, or really what would be the pathway to making that idea or implementing that idea on the ground. So the awareness programs about the possibilities that are available and a collective effort to actually put money on the table and not squeeze them out of their ideas. Sadly, I find that very often at a nascent stage, many good ideas have got sold very cheap. They've been they've already almost been taken over with a very small ticket check for lack of alternatives by one or the other investor. I personally believe that we must also seriously look at some kind of a clawback or some kind of instruments and a little more understanding on our part. And with that, by understanding, I mean a little more compassion towards the persons who come up with the ideas to see how they can get a better deal. Thanks.
That's a good way of looking at it. A little bit of compassionate capitalism would help. I don't know if you've reached wonderful. So I thought I'll just wrap up with one last quick question before handing over to you for your keynotes. In terms of ease of doing business, particularly when businesses are being run ethically, backed by institutional capital, well-run businesses, you've been a big proponent of, and you have taken lots of steps in reducing the red tape or requirements for running businesses easily. Any sort of plans there? Because institutionally, venture and venture-backed entrepreneurs and companies really thrive in that environment where the ease of doing business is much higher. and they can focus on really innovation and the businesses rather than regulatory requirements, which can sometimes be overhead.
Mr. Sinha, I think that's something I've been repeatedly appealing to all of industry, that on our part, we have a certain understanding and we'll try to do our best in reducing the compliance burden or regulatory burden, move towards single window, move towards self-regulation, self-certification. But this can best be done collectively. I think industry and businesses will have to become demanders of how we can make compliance easier, reduce the burden of regulatory requirements, make your life and your businesses easier. So, this will be something where I would, on the contrary, appeal to all of you to help us in understanding what are your practical day to day problems. Very often, you will know what is the solution also. And we, on our part, have to take a view that probably just because we had a few occasions which were not, a few instances where irregularities came before us, it should not deter us from taking bold decisions for ease of doing business. So, my approach is that whatever strict regulations we bring in, there will be a few cases which may be irregular, but that should not really paint the entire industry of business black. So I believe my Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi is himself very focused on ease of doing business. You know, over the last 7, 8 years, how he has relentlessly worked on this agenda. He's spoken on more than one occasion about reducing compliance burden, and we are tasked with that, all of us. So we'll be delighted to hear from you. What are the regulatory overreach or problems that we can help uh, unburden you from?
Thank you so much for all your answers and for being so open and accessible for such things. So with that, Honorable Minister, I'll hand over to you for your few keynote thoughts, where you of course answered several of our questions, which the audience is really looking forward to. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. I also see Rajat on the call. Uh, and thank you very much to IVCA for organizing this conclave 2022. It's very important that we keep this dialogue within the industry and with policymakers going so that we can continuously evolve. The whole startup world is about newer and newer ideas and newer ways to do things. So the same would apply to me and to policy making also. So in that sense, I think these conclaves that you have had since your inception have been truly a driving force in helping encourage private equity and venture capital industry in India. I'm sure this event, which is a manthan of sorts, a lot of ideas will flow in. You'll be exploring business opportunities. You'll be assessing the regulatory scenario about which you just spoke about. I'm sure you'll come up with a position paper or ideas at the end of the conclave, which you will share with us and which will help us in working towards a more benign or more user friendly regime for venture capital and private equity. The pivotal role you have played in the growth of the startup ecosystem, in the economic growth of the nation as a whole, and to drive innovation and bring new ideas to the fore are quite legendary. And I'd like to thank all your members for your contribution to our nation. Today, as we talk about an Atmanirbhar Bharat, a self reliant India, and when we are working towards creating a blueprint for the next 25 years, what we call the Amrit Kal, as we move towards the 100 years of India's independence, 2047, India at 2047. I think the new ventures about which we just discussed will need funding. They'll need support during the initial phases. We will need the venture capitalists to support these startups to kind of take off, mentor, handhold, and your organization can act as the golden bridge between the government, startups, the market, consumers, and effectively promote innovation in different spheres. Well, as you rightly pointed out, India has created a niche for itself in the startup map of the world. The Prime Minister launched this movement, I think, about 6 years ago, January 16th, 2016, probably, or thereabouts. And ever since, we've seen the entrepreneurial spirit of young India at its very best all across India. We have over 60,000 startups. And today, I see the startups as the DNA of the future of India. In fact, before this, I had a program and I got delayed in the traffic coming back, in which the Municipal Corporation of Delhi has upgraded a school in which they've also provided facilities for the children to think innovatively and differently. And one of the facilities they've provided is a toy bank. Now, toys play a very important role in the initial phases of a child's development: mental, physical, emotional development, psychological development. Now, in a way, if you ask me, that's where the startup story begins. How are we going to get our children at a very nascent age, literally in kindergarten, also have this spirit of inquiry I talked about earlier? And in fact, in my speech there also, I spoke about this, that the teachers and the school need to focus on this budding entrepreneurial spirit in these kids. Don't make them job seekers, make them job creators. And I personally think that's the new India that we're all looking up to, looking forward to. As it is said, if somebody offers you an amazing opportunity, but you're not sure you can do it, then it's best to say yes and then learn to do it later. That never say no spirit is what we want to kind of introduce and promote in the country. Uh, well, for the industry or for the startups, I can only say that give these venture capitalists an idea that they cannot refuse. In the words of Godfather, Don Corleone. And I'm sure our angel investors, our venture capitalists will also look at these new ideas with that same spirit, that if I lose this opportunity, somebody else is going to grab it and make money out of it. You will, of course, play a very defining role in the years to come. If we want to promote this whole ecosystem, your role as angel financiers, venture capitalists, seed capital providers is going to be extremely important. And I really wish all of you the very, very best in your work. The world is changing fast. Today, a middle class family literally earns money running a bed and breakfast after registering on a startup, or a small restaurant owner is expanding his business rapidly through another startup. A panwala is accepting digital payments through a third startup. And I won't be surprised, since I'm talking about panwala, if he puts up a CCTV camera with facial recognition on it, and as the customer is walking towards the store, or maybe I can go one step further, and there is a panwala like that in Mumbai, where as soon as the customer soon as the car is parked near the shop and he looks up and he sees your car, he knows who's coming in, he knows the kind of pan he's going to order, and he's already preparing the pan. I don't know if that could be a startup idea for somebody. But well, when we are also talking of pan, I do hope कि कोई हमारे इन्वेस्टर्स को चूना ना लगाए. Because we want all of you also to succeed, to grow with us, to not look at supernatural profits, but look at more reasonable returns on your investment. And the best way is if you get a good return on more and more of your investments, then I think you will also look for more reasonable returns. So I really pray and wish that you continue to contribute. I remember the Prime Minister had once said that the current decade is going to be the decade of India. TECH, the decade of India. And this will be a decade where technology and innovation will drive the future of Indian economy. Whether it is UPI or CoWIN, today we are showing to the whole world what Indian capabilities are and how we can leverage digital platforms for mass transformation of the lives of 1 billion plus people. I look forward to also your support and ideas on how we can reduce our compliance burden for industry and for your industry. I hope the PLI schemes will also open opportunities for new businesses and entrepreneurs. PM Gati Shakti. And I would wish, if you have time during your conclave, to that you invite somebody either from my ministry or the director of BISAC who prepared PM Gati Shakti to give you a flavor of what it is. It's truly transformational. I mean, if a startup had come up with this idea, he could have been a billionaire today. This idea came from the Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, who does not seek to be a billionaire but wants to make all of our young startups billionaires. But he's been focused on this for a long time. I promise you, it's a simple technology based solution. How we can plan better, how we can implement better, how we can monitor better, how we can cut down the time and cost overruns on our infrastructure projects, how we can locate our industries and ideas at the right location. It has transformational dimension. And if you have the opportunity, I would urge all of you to understand PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan. You'll really find it very, very interesting. We are also promoting, as I said earlier, innovation labs at the school level. We have now over 9,000 Atal Tinkering Labs, giving students a chance to innovate in school at a young age. We also are now reaching the 400 club. Both our cricketer Ashwin is soon going to have 400 test cricket wickets in his through his bowling. He's on the cusp of entering the 400 club, and we as a nation are on the cusp of reaching our target of a $400 billion of merchandise goods export, a never before feat for the country. We also don't want to rest on our laurels and want to go rapidly to first get into the league of the late Shane Warne, somebody we've all watched all through our younger days. He was in the 700 plus club. Muralitharan was in the 800 plus club. Similarly, our exports should see that growth in merchandise and services. And I pray and wish that our startups contribute significantly as we move towards $1 trillion of exports to begin with, and then $1 trillion of merchandise exports and $1 trillion of services exports. That is $2 trillion of exports that I believe believe should be the first target that we as a nation should acknowledge and accept. The Prime Minister had interacted with over 150 startups on 16 January earlier this year, and he has also announced that this will now be celebrated as the National Startup Day, taking the startup culture and the ecosystem to far-flung areas of the country. I'd like to suggest a four-pronged focus from your industry. One, I would urge investors and capital providers to focus on four F's: fostering innovation and future technologies. Two, facilitate mobilization of domestic capital, about which I just spoke in detail. Three, fast tracking self reliance and Atmanirbhar Bharat, the vision of picking up new ideas, new products that we can make in India efficiently and competitively. Four, focus on tier 2, 3, 4 cities and towns to take this to more remote areas. And this four pronged action plan can truly serve the country in the days and years to come. In conclusion, as Swami Vivekananda had said, all power is within you. You can do anything and everything. So, ladies and gentlemen, it'll be our collective effort, Sabka Prayas, that will truly take India forward and reinforce our position as a global player. Thank you very much. I wish all of you success in your business. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, and that was a very inspirational speech. And I think you're not only inspired, but as I mentioned previously, you've always been open to listening, engaging. Thank you for your multiple offers. The session on Gati Shakti, which we'll definitely take up. On any suggestions from the broader ecosystem on reducing friction in a pragmatic way. I think, and the four Fs you spoke about, I think they all make sense on fostering innovation, of course, and deep tech, which is an area where we can do more. Domestic capital, of course, is a very important role, including pension fund capital flowing in India. But also, I think you touched upon the important bit of self-reliance, Atmanirbhar Bharat, including on manufacturing when you spoke about merchandise goods. I think we also need to see a lot of innovation on the manufacturing side in the next wave for India. So all very good thoughts that you left with us. Very inspirational and great to see that you're fostering entrepreneurism right from early days of school. I think so many, apart from the Atal Labs, your talks to school students, I think it'll just help build up the culture. So with that, I hand over to Rajat for any further sort of comments that we may have. But thank you so much for your talk and for your time.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your time.